Dear friends of the Right to Food, thank you for coming. We are going to initiate the launching of the 15 years review of what happened with the implementation and use of the voluntary guidelines on Right to Food. And immediately, as we have very short time, I pass the floor to Máximo Torero, Director of the Economic and Social Development Department from FAO. Máximo, you have the floor.
So, good afternoon. Good afternoon to everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here, and especially to touch on a topic which is extremely important, which is the guidelines of Right to Food. As you know, 15 years ago, this document was published, and now we are 15 years. This is the new document of the guidelines of Right to Food. This is extremely important because we need to assure that people have access to food, and we need to assure that food is available for everybody, and that they can have access to whatever is needed to achieve the level of micronutrients that they need to have in place. The Right to Food guidelines have guided us and encouraged us over the years to put in place better economic and social policies that are truly people-centric and look at how to sustainability safeguard food security and nutrition for the most vulnerable, guaranteeing essential services and rights to all, such as healthcare, education, and social protection. SOFI 2019 raised something which is unacceptable, which is that we are no longer decreasing since the last 3 years in terms of undernourishment. We are increasing in terms of numbers, 820 million, but not only that, the rate, the 11%, is stable or even in some cases increasing. And in the most vulnerable countries, the situation is even worse, like South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. And even in Latin America, which was pretty good in the years before, the situation is now not as we would like, and it's also increasing. So clearly, these guidelines could help to minimize that problem. It's one more element that is central to be able to minimize this problem. And the guidelines have triggered the need to expand and further elaborate policy guidance on the governance of land, tenure, small-scale fisheries, responsible investments in agriculture, protected prices, and most recently on sustainable food systems and nutrition. And let me raise a point here, which is really important. We talk a lot about food systems and sustainable food systems for nutrition, but we need to be very careful. One thing is the global public good of achieving sustainability, which we want. Very different is the private good. And we need to assure that our farmers, whatever technologies we're trying to teach them to create sustainability, have to be also profitable for them. That's the only way they will have the income and the resources to be able to achieve the right to food, because they are also consumers, and they also have to have the sufficient income to be able to do it. The global normative instrument anticipated the urgency to address today's most pressing global challenges: conflict, migration, climate change, connected issues such as drought, water scarcity, natural disasters, and hazards, which cannot be solved unless leaving no one behind ceases to be just a motto. So it's really important, and the trilogy of the SOFIs in the last years has been exactly looking at conflict, climate change, and downturns and slowdowns in economic growth. In that sense, these guidelines have been extremely centric for this. More needs to be done. 50 years of implementing the Right to Food guidelines also reminds all of us of the important role played by the Rome-based agencies, the CFS, the UN OHCHR, and other stakeholders which together with member countries can ensure the continuation of this commitment and advance the human right to adequate food towards 2030 and beyond. FAO in particular has been convening agents, facilitation of policy dialogues, provider of technical support, and highly quality knowledge generation hub. To this end, furthermore, FAO is custodian of 21 SDG indicators, which allow us to track the performance of how we are doing, especially the ones related to SDG 2 and SDG 1, which are of core importance. So we can track, we can see when countries that adopt these guidelines are seeing improvements or not, and that's something that we need to bring up. We need to monitor, we need to be transparent. So it's not just the guidelines, it's seeing how they are implemented and seeing the effects they are having, to see if also if they are being implemented in the proper way. So before finishing and leaving all of you, I just want to raise the importance of what we are facing today. We have to achieve the SDGs by 2030. We need to achieve SDG 1 and SDG 2, which for us is a precondition to all the other SDGs. The issues of climate and climate change are important and are cross-cutting in SDG, and all of them are interlinked. But if we don't achieve SDG 1 and 2, we won't be able to achieve any of the others. So it's really important to keep that in mind. It's really important to bring the importance of guidelines like this one, that already have 15 years of history, to be able to move forward. So thank you very much, and let me now move, without further ado, to thank enormously the government of Spain for supporting the ongoing support on this publication, and especially the development of these guidelines over time. So thank you very much to the government of Spain for all their support across these years. Now let me move to introduce the panelists that are with us today. So we have three panelists, and please apologize, but I will have to leave after introducing the panel, so my deep apologies to the panelists, but I have to go to other important events, which doesn't mean that this is not important, but they overcommit me. So the first one is Mr. Gabriel Ferrero, Director General for Sustainable Development and Cooperative Policies and Government of Spain. Thank you very much for being here. We knew each other from some time ago, so it's a pleasure to have you here. Gabriel Ferrero is the Director General of Sustainable Development Policies in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, European Union and Development of Spain. Spain has been for years supporting the work of FAO on the right to food, and it is a country with a strong right to food focus in its international development and cooperation work, as well as within its national food security context. Mr. Ferrero has served as Senior Advisor for 2030 Agenda implementation. He has worked as Senior Policy Advisor in the Executive Office of the United Nations, Secretary General from 2011 to 2017, and from 2012 to 2015, he was part of the post-2015 development planning team under the leadership of Amina Mohamed. Before joining the UN, he served as Deputy Director General of Development Policies, the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Cooperation. In this position, he has lead author of 2009-2012 Spanish Development and Cooperation Master Plan. Mr. Ferrero holds a PhD on Development Planning and Management by the Technological University of Valencia, Spain, in which he served as a full-time professor for 10 years. So thank you very much for being here. Our next speaker is Mrs. Grenche Barth-A, Emerita, Department of Nutrition, University of Oslo. Grenche Barth-A is already for several years in active retirement at the Department of Nutrition at the University of Oslo. From a biological background, she early worked to develop the focus of public nutrition in higher education and research, and has been part of an interdisciplinary group of Norwegian scholars who in the early 1980s began to clarify what the right to food as a human right actually entails, and when linking nutritional perspectives to international human rights standards and principles. She has been working closely with several UN organizations and was the first nutrition advisor to IFAD for more than 4 years in the early 1990s, and among other things, co-leader of the former working group in nutrition, ethics and human rights of the UN Standing Committee on Nutrition. Throughout her career, he has pushed for putting the right to food on the international agenda, and has been part of the active development proceeding the right to food guidelines, as well as in their follow-up. At the chief of the Millennium, she was invited to FAO and its partnership program to sit for 2 months to write an internal document on the future of the right to food in the organization, and was close to the right to food unit in the first decade of the millennium. She likes to call herself an academic activist, and in 2015 she was conferred the Royal Norwegian Order of Merit for her contribution to strengthen the understanding of the right to food as a human right. So it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much for coming. And our third and not least panelist is Mrs. Hilda Elver, United Nations Special Rapporteur on Right to Food. Mrs. Hilda Elver is an international law professor and global distinguished fellow at the UCLA Law School, Wrestling Food Law and Policy Center, my alma mater. She's also a research professor at the UC Santa Barbara, where she has been distinguished visiting professor since 2002.